Hey, it's Michael Zapersky from consultingsuccess.com. Let's break down the different consulting fee structures that are available to you as a consultant, and then really contrast and compare the positives and negatives of each. So a very common one is hourly. Let's put here positive and then put negative. So hourly, right? A lot of consultants use hourly fees, and that's really where a lot of people get started, right? The marketplace, that's kind of the status quo for people. Now, what's good about hourly fees? Because there isn't much good about them, right? What's good about them though? They're easy. It's pretty easy to figure out how much you want to make and then what you should be charging on an hourly basis, right? Based on how many days you're going to be working, so on and so forth, and to come with an hourly fee that makes sense for you. The problem with an hourly fee, and there's a lot of problems, right? Number one, there's not a good way to work with a client on an hourly fee, right? Because your interests aren't really aligned. In the client situation, they're not going to want to bring you in and share new ideas with you as much or ask you to do something that might be beneficial for the project, because they know that every time they ask you, you're going to be charging them more, right? Like the clock is always ticking. For you as a consultant, it means you always have to be thinking about tracking your time and how many hours, and you might find yourself actually wanting to slow the project down a little bit or take your time a bit more, because the longer that it takes, the more time that you spend on it, the more that you make. So there's just not a good alignment between you and the client. The other big problem is that there's a real ceiling, right? You can only make so much. So we'll put ceiling and we'll say non-alignment, right, between you and the client. You can only earn so much on hourly fees, right? You can't create more time in the day, and so the only way to make more is to work more, right? More hours, more money. That's really creating another job for yourself. That's not creating much freedom and flexibility, which is what most consultants want. The next is daily, right? A daily rate. A lot of consultants, a lot of consulting firms use a daily rate. The positives, again, is that it's easy, because essentially a daily rate is just your hourly rate times a number of hours per day gives you your daily rate. And some consultants might use a daily rate of $1,000, $1,500, $2,000, $3,000, whatever the number is, right, as they get more experience and expertise and can deliver more value and results. The problem, though, with a daily rate is the same as the problem with hourly, that you can only earn more by working more days. It's not that you're working more hours, you're working more days, but again, more days means more hours. So there's a real ceiling for growth. The only way around this is if you start working and bringing in with other consultants, and then you're charging them out at a certain daily rate, and you're capturing the margin between what you're paying them and what the client is paying you. But that requires obviously more resources. You got to start managing other people, and so if you don't want to do that, then the daily rate is definitely not a good one, right? A lot of consultants will use a daily rate because that's what firms, buyers of consulting services, many are used to paying based on a daily rate or an hourly rate. But just because many are used to it doesn't mean that it's the right approach for you to take. In fact, I would certainly suggest against it. Another model is retainers, right? And this was one that in my early days, I really, really liked as a consultant, right? Using retainers because there's ongoing income coming. It's not a one-time project, and it provides a sense of stability, right? It makes you feel that things are going over a longer period of time and you don't have to search for that next client as quickly. And so that's definitely a good thing, right? It's what we could call stable income. However, if we're really honest about the situation, it's only stable for as long as the client pays you. After a certain period of time, they may decide to stop, and then it's not stable anymore. But the real problem with retainers is that what most consultants find is that as you continue working with the client over a longer period of time, they start to treat you less like a consultant and more like an employee. And you start to find that your role within the organization becomes more challenging because your expertise isn't valued to the same degree. You end up either being asked to do a whole bunch of things that aren't really related to your core expertise, or on the flip side, you actually are almost asked to do nothing. And so then you find that your value as a consultant in that organization is decreasing. where a retainer can still work very well is when you set it up as more of an advisory type of retainer as opposed to a work type of retainer, meaning that you're providing just more of your knowledge, your expertise, your insight, as opposed to going in and doing work. For many consultants in an advisory type of role, a retainer can still be very profitable. And the nice thing about a retainer is that it's not always, if structured properly in an advisory capacity, is not tied to number of hours. So we could say that the positives is stable income. The negatives is you kind of become almost like we could say an employee or treated as an employee, and your value decreases over time. This is what many consultants find, and it's not a bad thing, right? You can work with a client for even months or years in some cases in a retainer model and have a lot of success with it, but you will start feeling over time that it's just the value is decreasing. Now, another model is project, right? Or another structure is project-based fees. Now, project-based fees is a really good direction and option for you to take. The problem with project-based fees is that most people do it wrong, right? Most people, when they think about a project-based fee, what they're really doing is just calculating the number of hours involved in that project and then creating a proposal around that. And so projects are nice because you think about typically a larger payment, right? And in your mind, it's not hourly. But what I continue to see a lot of consultants do is that their project-based fees are actually just hourly. And so if you're doing it on an hourly basis, then there's still a cap, right? There's still kind of that ceiling. Now, a slight variation on this is what I call ROI. We'll say ROI-based. Now, ROI-based fees are still projects where you go in and you take a client through either a specific phase or a stage of a project, or you do the complete project for them. And whether it's big or small, the value in ROI-based is that really it's based on the ROI and the value that you are providing to that client within that project. So your compensation is not based solely on how many hours you spend working on that project, but if you can spend 10 hours and create a result that otherwise somebody might charge, based on a lot more hours, but you can receive that same level of compensation in a much shorter period of time, there's a great benefit not only to you, but also to the client, because they start to experience the result and the outcome that they want much faster, right, in a much shorter period of time. So the ROI-based approach, the positive to it, right, is that there's a lot more leverage. If you can create in 10 hours a result for a client that is worth $1 million, you can find that there are many situations where you can charge $10,000, $50,000, even in some cases more than that for a very short number of hours, right? So if you were to break that down to what an hourly fee would actually be, there'd be almost no one out there that would want to pay it. No organization would feel comfortable paying thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars per hour. But if you do it based on ROI and value, you're actually able to achieve that because you get the client to be focused on the real outcome and the value for them and the ROI that they're going to see, which then makes it a positive investment for them and an easier decision. So the positive is leverage. The positive is high value. The negative, however, of it is that some people see it as being difficult. But it's only difficult when you don't know how to approach it. If you know how to ask the right questions in a conversation, if you know what to look for, if you know how to structure your fees in a way that aligns with ROI and aligns and supports value, it's actually not difficult. It can be pretty easy and simple. The whole thing is you need to know how to do it, right? So look for resources, or you can come to consultingsuccess.com. We have a lot of resources that talk about how to actually structure your fees based on ROI and value. This is work that we do on a very close one-to-one basis with our clients in our coaching programs. But there's a lot of resources that we have on the site that can guide you in this direction. So there is no one best way. I mean, definitely I would highly recommend that most consultants go in this direction Retainer has certainly some merit to it in some situations, but there is no right. I mean, if you're very happy working more hours and kind of, being at a certain ceiling, that's totally fine if that works for you. But why would you do that when you could earn significantly more with a lot more leverage, work few hours, make a lot more money, still make a real impact for your clients and enjoy the freedom and flexibility that comes with it? So this is a nice little breakdown. Hope that it helps. Reach out if you have some questions on it. But this kind of covers the most common consulting fee structures and both the positives and negatives of each.